Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Jordyn and welcome to another NetGalley reading vlog. I'm so excited to be kicking this video off because 2024 has a whole bunch of books coming out that I am very excited for. If you missed it on my channel, I did post a Q1 anticipated releases video where I talked about over 50 books that I know are coming out in January through March of 2024 that I personally have my eye on. In that video, I mentioned that several of them I already have NetGalley arcs of, so I will be reading early copies of them, getting my reviews out, and that's what I am following through on today. I am going to be starting and actually finishing all of my January arcs in this video. We've got a bunch of them, so it is going to be somewhat of a lengthy video, but I'm excited to share some of these new books coming out, letting you know my thoughts and if I would recommend them. Some of them are more well-known and more hyped, and then some of them are much lesser known. I personally haven't heard of them before. I'm quickly going to run through what the books are that I'll be reading for this video, and then we're just going to kind of rapid fire it. I'm not going to have much B-roll in this video or midway updates. Just because I have so many books to get through, I really want to get to my overall reviews and recommendations. And if you end up enjoying this video and want to go back and watch some of the previous vlogs I've done similar to this last year, then I will have the playlist linked below. Knock yourself out. And with that, let's get into the books. So in publication order, the books that I'll be reading for this video are, first of all, The Heiress by Rachel Hawkins. This is a thriller by an author I've read all of her previous books. I really loved one of them. The other two were just okay. So this will kind of be a third time's the charm test. This book comes out on January 9th. Then similarly, I'm going to be reading Only If You're Lucky by Stacy Willingham. This is another adult thriller and an author who's written two books that I've read them both, and I generally enjoyed them both, but I don't think I've given either of them 5 stars. So again, third time's the charm. Did I just say third time's the charm for Rachel Hawkins when this will be my 4th book by her? I don't know what I'm saying. Anyway, the Stacy Willingham comes out on January 16th. Then we've got 2 books coming out on January 23rd. The first one is Light of the Fire by Sarahlyn Bruck. I can't remember if this one is historical fiction or general contemporary, but either way, I'm excited for it. I have not read from this author before. Also coming out on the 23rd is Silent Judgment by Zaire. I believe this is kind of a crime thriller type book. I haven't read by this author, but it looks like they've published a bunch of books. Excited to give it a try. And then 2 books coming out on January 30th. The first one is Come and Get It by Kiley Reid. This is a contemporary book, I believe set at like a university. I did read this author's debut novel and absolutely loved it, so I'm hoping I love this one just as much. And then last but not least, we have 27 Minutes by Ashley Tate, which is a thriller. I have not read from this author before. I can't remember if this is a debut book or not, but I was intrigued by the cover and the title, so we're gonna give it a try. So with that, I'm gonna get started on reading these books. I'm not even sure which one I'm gonna start with first. I might look at the length of the books and maybe pick a short one to get me started, because to be honest, I'm feeling a little bit out of my vlogging game. It's been a couple weeks since I filmed a reading vlog, and honestly, since I've read a book in general. So I'm excited to get back into it, but I'm ready to make some quick progress, probably with the shortest book on this list. So I will be back once I have finished it and can give you my overall thoughts on the first January arc for this video. All right, my friends, I have my first update. I finished the first book for this video. So let's get on with the review. I did decide to go with the shortest book on this list, at least according to the page numbers that came up in the NetGalley app when I opened each of these books. So I'm not 100% positive this is the shortest by print version page numbers, but anyway, the one that it turned out to be is surprisingly The Heiress by Rachel Hawkins. So that's the book I read, and let's see if I can give a coherent synopsis. This book is pretty complex. It didn't get confusing to me, which is good, but kind of hard to explain in just a couple of sentences. So this book is basically the story of this woman named Ruby, who is the heiress that the title refers to. And at the time this book takes place, she has just passed away as an old woman. And her story is really interesting because she, when she was a child, got lost. And it turns out she was abducted, and she was reunited with her family, which was this big like news story. And so basically for her entire life, she was infamous for being that stolen child. And then into adulthood, she had 5 husbands that all died. So she became again infamous for being the rich woman whose husbands have all mysteriously passed away. A lot of people think she killed them, but she was never convicted of anything. And then now, after she passed away, all of her belongings and her fortune have been passed on to her son, who was actually a boy she adopted in her life. And the story kicks off with that boy, who's now an adult man, who's married, going back to the estate to work out the whole situation with the inheritance. And he is not the most popular person in his family related to cousins, aunts, and uncles, because he was adopted and yet he's the person inheriting all of his adopted mother's wealth. And so as far as the actual plot goes, we are really just learning about the story of Ruby's life, and then there kind of is a mystery slash thriller element related to that inheritance. Obviously it's messy, like I mentioned, so it's just those dynamics that you're seeing play out in the present day. But really the bulk of this story feels like a historical fiction. So I would definitely recommend it, but with that caveat, know that you're not going into this twisty, turny, fast-paced thriller, because if you think you are, you might be disappointed. Definitely be prepared for a slower burn, more character-driven, almost historical fiction book. It actually felt very, very similar to me to The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, because a portion of this story is told in letters written by Ruby as she details her 5 husbands that she went through and what really happened with their deaths. So it felt really similar, and I loved Evelyn Hugo, so I also really liked this storytelling, and I like historical fiction, so I liked the majority of the book. The last like 20% is where I would say the thriller element comes in. It does have some action to it, but I just want to be clear that that's not most of the book. So overall, I enjoyed this one. I thought it was interesting. I don't know if I quite enjoyed it enough to give it 4 stars, but it definitely is a strong 3 stars. It is my second favorite Rachel Hawkins book to this point. My favorite is Reckless Girls. That one is an isolated, beachy, tropical thriller that I had so much fun with and was 5 stars. I haven't had another 5-star from Rachel Hawkins yet. Like I said, this one's my second favorite, but it's so different in genre that it's kind of surprising that it's the same author, but I definitely like this one more than The Villa and way more than The Wife Upstairs. I guess if I were going to compare this to any of her other books, I do think it's closest to The Villa, but again, I liked this one more. So hopefully that review is somewhat helpful in helping this book find its audience. I'll be very interested to hear other people's reviews on it, given that it is so character-driven and historical and less thrillery. I'm interested to see how that goes over. And then I do have another update of a book that I did not finish, but I decided to DNF. So in the next book I picked up, I was hoping to get more of a fast-paced, twisty thriller. I picked up 27 Minutes by Ashley Tate. And oh man, obviously given the fact that I DNF'd it, I was disappointed by it. Let's give the synopsis. This is a young adult mystery thriller book that follows these 4 main characters. It alternates between all 4 of their perspectives. And all 4 of these characters have some connection to this accident that happened, I think 10 years ago, where there was a car accident, a girl in their town died, and there are secrets being kept about what really happened. And the kind of hook for the book is that it took 27 minutes for this one guy, who was the sister of the girl who was killed, to call 911 after the accident happened. He was in the accident with her, and something happened in those 27 minutes that delayed him calling emergency services that a lot of people in the town think is the reason she died. Had he called right away, had help arrived sooner, she might have survived. So secrets all around. And that's definitely an interesting synopsis, but this book was just not that interesting. The few problems I had with it, first of all, these characters were very confusing to read from. They all sounded exactly the same. It was very hard to keep them straight and their relationships to each other. I was a little confused about the ages of these characters because the accident happened like 10 years ago. I assume they're out of high school now, but they seem like they're in high school. They seem very immature. We do get like past and present timelines. So I just didn't get enough separation between the characters and the timelines and really understanding how old they are at these times and where they are now, Like it was very confusing. I should mention I made it 20% into this book, so not a long ways, but enough to know that I just didn't care about these characters enough to find out what happened to them. I did go in and read reviews of this book before deciding to DNF it, and it doesn't have the most positive ratings, which is fine. I don't judge all of my enjoyment off of other people's ratings and reviews, but a lot of what reviews were saying were similar to what I was feeling about the characters not feeling fleshed out or well defined, the timelines being confusing, and then a lot of the negative reviews talked about the ultimate reveal in this book being really underwhelming and basically nothing happening for 90% of this book, and then the big reveal and all of the action happening in the last chapter. So what I did was skip forward to the last chapter and I went ahead and read the reveal and the conclusion of the book. And it definitely solidified my decision that I didn't need to go back and read the rest of the book because I totally understood like all the explanation, and I could see myself being similarly frustrated had I read basically the other 80% of the book before getting the grand reveal, and it definitely felt underwhelming. There are a few reviewers who said that the reveal was surprising to them, and I think if it's shocking to you if you didn't see it coming, then that could redeem the book. But I can definitely see how by that point in the book you just are bored and want the answer, so you'll take anything. But yeah, I DNF'd it. I don't rate my DNFs on Goodreads, but I do write a short review just to tell people why I DNF'd it, and that's what I submitted to NetGalley as well for this book. So kind of a bummer, but we are moving forward. Last halfway update is that I have just barely started the next book for this vlog. I started Come and Get It by Reid. I'm so excited for this one. This one sounds like it's I don't know if it's a dark academia book or it's just set at a university and more of a contemporary. So far so good. I'm definitely interested in these characters, and I'll just be back once I have finished it and can give you a better synopsis and my overall thoughts on this book. But I'm really crossing my fingers and hoping that I love this one. I feel like I'm due for a winner in this video. So here's to hoping, and I'll check back with you later. All right, my friends, it is somewhat late at night. Sorry that the lighting in my bedroom is probably not the best, but I just finished the next book for this vlog. I'm sitting here because I have my Kindle holder set up here on the bed, which is amazing. Highly recommend if you are a Kindle reader. It's definitely helping me fly through these NetGalley books. Not sponsored at all, but I will link this stand and remote control in the description box in case you want to get one for yourself. But anyway, the book I just finished is Come and Get It by Reid. What also helped me fly through this book is the audiobook, which was put up onto Libro FM early as an ALC or advanced listener copy, which if you are a bookish influencer, you have a following on social media, I highly recommend signing up for the Libro ALC program. You get access to a whole bunch of audiobooks on the first day of every month, completely free, no obligation to actually listen to them or review them. You just download them and have them forever, but they are usually early audiobooks that come out in that month. So I got this one, and I did listen to the audiobook for the second half of the book along with reading it on my Kindle, and I think it was a really well done audiobook. It is going to be really hard to describe the plot of this book because it's fairly non-existent. It opens up with this scene where there's this new professor at this university campus. I should actually look it up. I think it's like Arkansas or something. And the pig is relevant. The pig on the cover is relevant to this university. Okay, yeah. Woo Pig Suey. It's an Arkansas thing. University of Arkansas. That's where this is set, and that's the only reason that this cover has a pig on the cover. Anyway, there's this new professor who moved to Arkansas for this new job. On top of being a professor, she's also a writer. She's written a couple of successful books, it sounds like, and on this college campus, the opening scene is that she's interviewing 3 female college students for research for her next book. And it's kind of an interesting opening situation because she's there under the guise of writing a book about weddings. So she got these 3 students who supposedly have a vested interest in weddings. She's asking them questions about like their preferences, things like that. And quickly we come to learn that there are some differences between these students in terms of wealth and class. The professor is Black. I think the 3 girls she's interviewing originally are white, but they have a black roommate, and their RA, or their, what is it, resident assistant or whatever, the person kind of in charge of their floor, is also a black woman. So also kind of an unintentional racial element comes up. Obviously intentional to the book, but it feels like it's gonna have something very interesting to say. But from there, the book is basically just about these characters' interactions and their dynamics together through the college year. The RA and the professor eventually strike up a friendship turn relationship, which is questionable because there's a fairly large age gap there. And it was interesting. It just felt pointless. And as I was reading this book, I was thinking to myself, man, I really hope there's a good climax or something that makes this book seem worth it, because I am interested in these characters. I just need them to do something that I care about, and they just didn't. This book does have like a climax, and there are some things that happen that come together in a satisfying or surprising way. Like, it is a book, it just really lacked a punch that I was hoping it would have, especially because it does include a lot of those social topics and commentary that I always love in books. I just needed more. So I'm left feeling very unsatisfied by this book, and I'm disappointed not only in the book, but I'm disappointed that I didn't like it because it was so highly anticipated by me. I know it's highly anticipated by a lot of people because a lot of people liked Such a Fun Age by this author, as did I, and I can see the similarities because it's not like that book was super plot heavy either, but to me that felt like it had more of a plot for me to latch onto, whereas this one just felt really aimless. So if you like that, then definitely I would recommend it because I do think it's well written. Like I said, these characters are intriguing. But if you are similar to me in that you need a plot to care about, then I don't think this will be the book for you. But once again, very interested to see more reviews come out about this book, especially because it was a Libro ALC. I imagine more reviewers will start listening to it before or around the time it comes out. But oh man, I'm disappointed, and I think I'm gonna give it 2 stars, which feels harsh because really the only thing wrong with it is that there's not much of a plot. And if that's Kiley Reid's intention, then it feels wrong to penalize it for that. But I just can't give it any more than that for my own personal enjoyment. So that is disappointing. Disappointing all around. So with that, I'm on to the next book. I have not started my next book yet. Let's look at which ones I have left. All right, I've got Silent Judgment, Only If You're Lucky, and Light of the Fire. I don't want to read Only If You're Lucky yet, just because that is going to be a Sleep When I'm Dead book club pick for March, which I am helping co-host with Lena and Jesse, who runs the book club. So when I read that one, I want to take good notes for it. So I want to make sure I'm mentally prepared. So that leaves Light of the Fire or Silent Judgment. Honestly, I've kind of been putting off Silent Judgment because I'm worried about it. It's not a book or an author I've heard anything else about. Well, neither is Light of the Fire. But for some reason, I'm nervous about Silent Judgment. So I think I'm just gonna tackle it head on. Let's go with that one next. I'm gonna take a shower, I'm gonna pop it onto my Kindle and read it until I fall asleep. And I'll be back once I've finished it, assuming I finish it, to give you the full synopsis and again, my final thoughts. All right, my friends, coming at you with a couple of updates. I wish I had better news. I really enjoy doing these ARC vlogs. I think it's fun giving reviews to books that I haven't personally seen a lot of reviews on. I especially like when I can bring underhyped books to the table and give recommendations that aren't the buzziest books of the season, but that I personally found that sounded interesting. And I love when they turn out as new favorites and they're kind of hidden gems that I can continually recommend on my channel. That's what I want every time I request a book on NetGalley that I haven't heard of before. But it makes me feel extra guilty when I don't end up liking them, because then it just feels like I'm giving bad press to books that otherwise have no press. And like I'm punishing these authors who did nothing wrong, but aren't getting a lot of, you know, marketing pushes or whatever from their publishers. I don't know, I feel weird about it. That doesn't mean I'm not gonna be honest, it just means I personally feel bad. for what I'm about to say, because I have two books to talk to you about, and they are the two books that I came into this video not knowing anything about. So the first one I think I was gonna come back and talk about is Silent Judgment by Zaire. I had requested this on NetGalley because the cover caught my eye. It's striking. It looked like some kind of darker thriller. After reading the synopsis, that's also the vibe I got, kind of a crime thriller. I hadn't heard of this book or the author before. I also hadn't heard of any of the comp titles that were included in the synopsis, like where it says for fans of XYZ authors. So I really had nothing to go off of to actually determine if I was gonna like this book. And unfortunately, when I opened it up on my Kindle and I started reading it, it became extremely obvious very early on that this is not a book for me. Just very vulgar. And like, I can deal with swear words, with darker content, all of that, but this was even more than I'm personally comfortable with, just like every sentence having swear words in it. Even the scene it starts out with is this main character being in bed with a woman and getting a call from someone and having to leave. And like the way that was described was very graphic and just not really my vibe. So I think I DNF'd this book on like page 3, which is not common for me. Again, I feel bad about it because I feel like I didn't even give this book a chance and I'm giving it an unjustified bad review, but it would also feel disingenuous if I somehow like cut it out of this video completely. So like I said earlier, I don't rate my DNFs. I'm not giving this book a bad rating or a bad review. I am just saying it's not the story for me. I feel bad that I requested it on NetGalley, but sometimes that happens. Sometimes you get drawn in by something you think is gonna be your thing. It turns out it's not. I think that's okay. So I guess that's all I'm gonna say about that, and I'm gonna move right along to the next book, which is Light of the Fire by Sarahlyn Bruck. I did read this book in its entirety, so that's a good thing. But unfortunately, I did not have a good experience with this one. Again, I was intrigued by the cover and the synopsis of this book. It sounded like it would be up my alley. Basically, this book follows 3 perspectives. 2 of them are 2 girls who were best friends in high school. And during their senior year in high school, they pulled a prank at their high school that ended up with an explosion, and the gym and the locker rooms at the school burned down. So it was this huge catastrophic event for this town, and now we're following them 20 years later. One of them is a professional women's soccer player who has left the hometown and has found success being a professional athlete, traveling all over the place. And then the other one still lives in their hometown and she has kids of her own now. She coaches soccer and she's basically still super ingrained in the community dynamics and everything. And the thing that still ties them together is that they pulled that prank 20 years ago, but they were never caught. So they've been living with this deep, dark secret that they're the ones who burned their high school gym down. And then the third perspective of this book is a guy named Jordyn, who was a classmate of those 2 girls, was in the same senior class. We're also following him 20 years later. He has recently moved back to the hometown to care for his father, who has been diagnosed with dementia, and his father was the janitor at the school, and he was the one who ultimately the police deemed guilty of the accident. So this janitor went down for this crime that he didn't commit. His life was kind of destroyed as a result. He was an outcast from the community. He became estranged from his children. Jordyn is just now reconnecting with him 20 years later. And Jordyn is now a journalist who has decided to start investigating what really happened to cause the explosion. And so, yeah, that book is basically about the characters keeping their secrets, basically the 2 girls keeping their secret that they've been keeping for 20 years and trying to avoid having Jordyn find out what really happened, because then he would publish it and they would have to pay for their crime. Listen, the first 50% of this book, I was in. I thought that setup was intriguing. I thought these characters were well written, well defined. I liked their personalities and reading from each of them. I liked finding out where each of them were in their lives now and seeing them kind of come together all back in their hometown. But soon after the 50% mark, I realized that like nothing is gonna happen in this book. There are no secrets being held from the reader, so we're just basically reading the characters finding out about each other's secrets. And I wish there were even more secrets to talk about, but it's literally just that one secret that those girls are holding and Jordyn uncovering the truth. And so in the second half of this book, it just became so draining to read because we already know what happened. And I wish this book would have employed some sort of twist or would have withheld some of the information from us longer in order to continue upping the intrigue as the book went on, but it just didn't. And by the time things get out, because inevitably it's a book, so that's what's going to happen, I feel like the way a lot of the characters reacted just were weirdly blown out of proportion. I mean, I can understand that, yes, this janitor went down for the crime and his life was somewhat ruined because of it. But other than that, this was a really low stakes situation. Nobody was injured, nobody died. They ended up rebuilding the gym, so now it's this beautiful like sports complex. I don't know, maybe it's because I didn't grow up in a small town, so I don't understand like small town dynamics, but the grudges that some people seemed to hold or seemed to garner up after these 20 years were just laughable to me. It was so strange. This book actually reminded me of The Dilemma by B.A. Paris, which is pretty famously not a lot of people's favorite book because it similarly is just about these characters keeping these horrible secrets from each other for no reason and under really weird circumstances. And in this case, I just feel like the way it all unfolded just seemed very unnecessary, underwhelming. I just didn't get it. Some of the messaging it was seeming to give at the end was a little confusing, hard to talk about without spoilers, but I don't know. I guess maybe this book was trying to just show like those small town dynamics and the relationships between the characters and how they change once people find out certain information. It just was weird. I don't know. It wasn't emotional at all. I don't feel like I learned anything or appreciated anything. It just was really disappointing. So that's a bummer. And I'm unfortunately gonna have to give this book 2 stars. It's not a 1 star because I didn't hate my entire reading experience. Again, the first half, I was still giving it the benefit of the doubt, so I was having a good time. But man, that back half just did not deliver. So a bummer of a book, and honestly, what a bummer of a reading experience in this vlog so far. I am hoping that my final book can redeem this. I'm going to start Only If You're Lucky by Stacy Willingham, and let's just all cross our fingers that this one is a winner. I saw a post on Instagram that my friend Gwen shared that was somebody comparing Only If You're Lucky to Reckless Girls by Rachel Hawkins, which if you remember from earlier in the video, I loved. So I'm really hoping that that rings true and I enjoy this book as much as Reckless Girls. If we can get a 5-star out of this video, I will consider it a success. Otherwise, I'm feeling very bummed out about all of the ratings of the books so far. But okay, I'm gonna get to reading. I'll be back once I finish this last book. I'll tell you all about what it's about and what my thoughts are on it. All right, my friends, I am here with my final update for this vlog. I just finished Only If You're Lucky, and I'm really glad I saved this one for last for a few reasons. One, spoiler, I enjoyed it the most out of all the books that I read for this video, so I'm happy to have at least a marginal success. Also, I don't know if I've mentioned this, but this is the Sleep When I'm Dead book club pick for March, which is a book club held by my friend Jessie over on her channel Reading with Jess. And in March, myself and Lena from Lena's Bookshelf are going to be her co-hosts discussing this book. So I was a little nervous about reading this book so far in advance of that book club discussion. So I knew I wanted to push it as late in this month as I could. And also while I was reading, I took so many notes on my phone, basically to help summarize everything, to keep notes on important pieces of information and like reveals that came out through the book. I kind of have just an overall summary of what happened so that come March, I can look back at these notes and remind myself of everything that happened, because this is kind of a complex, twisty thriller. A lot of things happened, and I actually also think that keeping these notes made me enjoy it more. I do think there's something about when you're reading a thriller, really letting yourself get into the story, get invested in the characters, keep track of who everybody is and what you know about them. I think that makes for a more satisfying conclusion when everything comes together. Not necessarily because it's all surprising, but I think it helps to have all the puzzle pieces in place. And I think that I, as well as other thriller readers, often become, I don't know, complacent or lazy, or we just, because we read so many thrillers, we pay less attention to each of them. And I think a lot of times that does me a disservice in that I kind of glaze through or glaze over thrillers, don't give them their full chance, and then by the end I feel a little dissatisfied because I didn't pay close enough attention to really appreciate the way it all comes together. So I'm glad I did that for this book because I did enjoy it, and I am gonna give it 4 stars. Let me give a little bit of a synopsis. So this is about a girl named Margot who goes to this college, and at the time this book takes place, she is a sophomore. She lives in a house with 3 other girls, and one of those girls has recently gone missing. So her and the 2 other roommates are all being questioned by detectives about what happened to her. And also, in addition to her going missing, there was a guy who also goes to their college who had died like around the same time or a few days before that roommate went missing. And it seems like that missing roommate probably knows something about the death of that guy, but also we're coming to figure out what all of the roommates know. It's a very like twisty and interweaving story. We also get flashbacks from not only the freshman year of college, but also before college of our main character. She's got a pretty interesting backstory, and overall, I thought this was a fun time. I can see why some people might think this book is slow. It is a pretty slow burn book for most of the book. Again, just learning about those character dynamics. I do really like a college setting, specifically because they're sophomores, they live in their own house. They're a little bit more independent than sometimes college or university stories that take place in the dorms. I don't know, I just really liked it because it was realistic that they were independent, they were on their own, making their own decisions, but also they're so young, they're only sophomores in college, they make stupid decisions. So it's kind of a fine balance between like immaturity and maturity, which I enjoy. And yeah, I liked overall where this all went. Definitely some parts of it were predictable, but other parts I was surprised by. And also, of course, there are many things in this book that are like convenient, that are definitely only coincidental because this is a book, but I personally feel like that's kind of what comes with the territory of thrillers. Most of them are pretty unbelievable. They don't hold up to a lot of fine scrutiny. The best ones do, which is why I think those are like 5-star favorites. But I don't want to fault this book for having convenient twists and things that come together in ways that are unbelievable, because that is just kind of what it is. Especially for a book that I feel is kind of leaning towards young adult, because again, they're in college. A lot of the stuff that happens and that's talked about in this book is very relatable, I think, to college students. And yeah, I feel like we can all agree that in young adult books or new adult books, those little coincidences are more forgivable. So overall, I'm giving it 4 stars. I am very excited to talk about this book in that book club discussion. There are also some interesting themes explored in this book and questions of like morality, black and white, good versus evil, which I always enjoy thinking about and discussing, and all these characters are going to be very interesting to dissect and talk about. So this is definitely my favorite book I read for this video. This is the book I would most recommend other people pick up out of this video. I am giving it 4 stars. Let's do a quick recap of everything I read or tried to read in this video. And I guess let's talk about from worst to best. So I did DNF 2 books in this video. Silent Judgment by Zaire, didn't really give it a chance, definitely not for me. And then 27 Minutes by Ashley Tate, gave it about 20%, decided it also wasn't for me, spoiled myself for the ending. Then I had 2 2-star books, Light of the Fire by Sarahlyn Bruck, was hoping this one would be a hidden gem, but was pretty disappointed. And then Come and Get It by Kiley Reid, a highly anticipated book by me that also left me wanting much more. Then we've got The Heiress by Rachel Hawkins, which I don't think was bad, I do think was interesting. I ended up giving it 3 stars and I would recommend it, but I definitely think it's an even slower book than this last one I read, but still a very interesting story altogether. And then the winner of this video, the best book that I read, Only If You're Lucky by Stacy Willingham. I'm really glad I enjoyed this one. Very different, I think, from her previous 2 books, which were also kind of different from each other. So what an interesting kind of spectrum of books we're getting from Stacy Willingham. This one probably is my favorite, though the other one I gave 4 stars from her was A Flicker in the Dark. So I would similarly recommend this one like that one. Her middle book, All the Dangerous Things, I only gave 3 stars. That one was definitely just okay for me. I like these other 2 by her more. So with that, I think that's all I have. Let me know if you are interested in any of these books that I talked about. Are you adding any of them to your TBR? Did you remove any of them from your TBR? I would love to hear. And or if you've read any of them, let me know your thoughts. Other than that, I don't think I have anything else. So thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in my next one.